like number.
I'm sure I'll understand someday. Zachar is here in Shabbos lekadshoy, page 138 in Torah or.
Yeah.
So remember the day of the Sabbath to sanctify it. Navin ma'u inyan hatzivui lekadesh Shabbat. What does it mean to sanctify the Shabbos? Why? Ve'alo Shabbat mikdesha v'kaima. It says in the Gemara that Shabbos is sanctified in and of itself. You don't have to do anything. We say Mekadesh Yisrael v'azmanim. We say that He sanctifies Hashem and the Chagim, and the festivals. The bracha in the davening is Mekadesh Yisrael v'azmanim. That Hashem sanctifies the Jewish people, and then we sanctify the holidays. Why? Because we define when they are. Because depending on when we decide that the new moon is to be blessed, when the month begins. So according to that is defined what day of when exactly what day will be which date, and so we define when the holidays are. But by Shabbos it's every 7 days from the beginning of the creation. So we don't do anything. It's sanctified anyway. In terms of the time, the sanctity of the time is there already. We can acknowledge it, we cannot acknowledge it, but it has nothing to do with us.
But that's Rak Shoimer, and we have Shoimer.
We're talking about Zachor. It doesn't say Shamor et Yom HaShabbat Lekadshu. It says one's Zachor, one's Zachor. It's the same thing. But it is the same thing. Lekadshu. The problem is though is the Lekadshu, not the Zachor or Shamor. The problem is the Lekadshu. How can you sanctify it?
With a cup of wine, Kiddush.
No, that's to acknowledge the sanctity. Mekadesh Shabbat. We say Hashem Mekadesh Shabbat, not you Zachor. Lekadesho. Lekadesho means you sanctify it. That's what it means. Doesn't mean to acknowledge its sanctity. Lizkor kedushato, would have said. Ladat kedushato. You know? Debish lema kedushat yom tov tolei b'Yisrael shel chachomim Mekadesh Yisrael v'azmanim, like we just said. That we say Mekadesh Yisrael v'azmanim. מתחילה ישראל ואחר כך הזמנים, משום דישראל אינו דקדשינו לזמנים. First Israel, first Hashem sanctified the Jewish people, then we decide what date it is, and then we sanctify the holidays. אבל בשבת אנו מברכים מקדש השבת, so in the Kiddush and in davening and everything, we just say מקדש השבת. Hashem sanctifies the Shabbos, not us. ואין אומרים מקדש ישראל והשבת. We don't say first He sanctifies us, then we sanctify the Shabbat. מאמר הזל, עתו שבת ישראל מקדש אלי. What the sages ask, is Shabbos something that the Jewish people sanctify? V'lo Shabbat mikdesha v'kaima. So it says in Masechus Shabbos. And Shabbos is already sanctified by Hashem. Misheshet Yemei Bereshit. From the moment He created the world, every 7 days it's Shabbos. ונקרא כל שבת, שבת בראשית, שלמעלה מבחינת ישראל. And in general they're called Shabbat Bereshit. Meaning that, like the first Shabbat in creation, which is before there was a Jewish people. Why? כי שבת הוא בחינת התגלות חוכמה אלה, ונקרא גילוי מוחין דאבא, שלמעלה מבחינת נשמות ישראל מושרשים בזה. כמו שמבואר בזוהר, פרשת אמור. So if you want to say it in Kabbalistic language, the sanctity, kedusha, always is in chokhmah, is in wisdom. So the wisdom here is the partzuf, it's the persona of the Father, mochin de'abba. It's the life force of the Father, which is higher than the souls of Am Yisrael, who are in Zayin, the small consonants. So it's like the difference between chokhmah and tiferes. So tiferes is lower than chokhmah. וכמו שמבואר בזוהר פרשת אמור, דאחידן בי במלכה, ומפרש הרמז, הם ישראל מושרשים בזעיר. So there says the Zohar that the Jewish people are in Zeir Anpin, meaning in Tiferes. זה בחסד, וזה בגבורה, וזה בתפארת, like we've seen in different places, the 7 types of Jews. So they correspond to the 7 midos from Chesed to Malchus. ושבת מבואר שם דהו גילוי מוחין דאבא בזה. But Shabbos begins from the persona of Abba, which is like Chokhmah, the sphere of Chokhmah, which is in the intellect. And I think that as we continue on, he'll explain to us what that means. ובאר שם גם כן איך שגילוי והמשכה זו היא מעצמו Ve'en tzarich l'ma'aseinu. And there the Ramaz also explains what it means that this revelation of Chokhmah is entirely independent of us. It's not connected to us, whether this Chokhmah is going to be revealed in the world. In other words, the Shabbos is like what sustains everything. And that's not dependent on us. So it's like, well, we say usually that the unification between Chokhmah and Bina is called the higher unification. That doesn't depend on our actions. What depends on our actions is Zayin Malchus, what we call the Echad Hashem Kutcha Brichu V'Shchinte. Kutcha Brichu is Za, that's Tiferes, and Shchinte, his Shchina, that's Malchus. So that depends on us. But not the very existence of the world. That doesn't depend on us. מה שאין כן ביום טוב גילוי קצת הערה מיוחין הדאבא שמאיר ביום טוב איפה הוא עשה? הוא על ידי מעשינו ותפילותינו. But the little bit, because in Yom Tov there's also Chetzio LaHashem, it says, that half of Yom Tov is for Hashem, even though we sanctify it, but half of it is dedicated to Hashem. So that half, that does depend on our actions. Like we said, Mekadesh Yisrael v'Azmanim, meaning that we do actions here below, the Kutcha Brichu and Shchinte, and Za and Malchus, and it affects the higher unification between Abba and Ima, between the Chokhmah and Bina. But in any case, again, this is just technical language. והנה בדיברות האחרונות נאמר שמור את יום השבת לקודשו, ואמור הזה זכור ושמור בדיבור אחד נאמר, ועניין זה שמור ומצוות לא תעשה, like you said before. And there's also, in the first, in Yitro, it says זכור את יום השבת לקודשו. And in Vayitchanan, it says שמור את יום השבת לקודשו. So say the sages, why does Moshe Rabbeinu change the reading from Yitro, from this week's Parsha, to Vayitchanan? So they say, because really, when Hashem spoke, He spoke both of them.
Both at the same time.
Okay. Both of them were said at the same time.
Both of what?
Zachor and Shemor. Remember, okay. and the guard.
And guard, okay.
Both of them were said at the same time, because Hashem speaks more than one thing at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And because Moshe Rabbeinu heard it directly from Hashem, the Jewish people didn't, because after the second commandment, they couldn't take it anymore, so they asked Moshe Rabbeinu to be the intermediary.
Mm-hmm.
But Moshe Rabbeinu himself, he did hear it from Hashem, that both words were said at the same time.
Mm.
And what do they represent? So Zechol, to remember, is the positive commandments that are related to Shabbos, for instance, to make Kiddush. And Shamor is the negative commandments associated with Shabbos, which is not to do toil, not to do malacha. כל מקום שנאמר הישמר פן ועל אינו אלא לא תעשה. So it gives the example that how do we know that Shamor means to refrain? Because it says every word that it says hishamer, meaning guard yourself from something, or don't, or lest. Pen is lest. So, Eino ela lo tase, all these mean a prohibitive commandment. V'zachor ramach mitzvot aseh, to remember. So, in general, that means this. The zachor, ze zichri lo'olam, v'ze shmi. Ador v'ador, like we said in Parshas Bo, at the end of B'shalach. So, zachor, the male is always related to the 248 prescriptive commandments. He's Zachor in Yudke Gimatra Reish Memchet, because it says the Zachor is 233, and when you add to it 15, Zachor is also equal to Etzachaim. So that's the male part, and Etzadat, which is why Chava was more attracted to it, is like the female side of the Garden of Eden. In any case, Zachor is 233, and when you add Yudke to it, then it becomes 248. Like we said last week, like at the end of the Shalach, it says, Ze zichri le'olam, Ze shmi le'olam, Ze zichri le'dor dor. This is my name forever, and this is my remembrance, my memory, from generation to generation. So there's a famous gematria that comes from the Zohar that zichri is 227, and when you add to it 11, you come to 237, and when you add 11, you get to 248. In any case, the Zachor means the positive commandments, which are the more masculine, and Shamol, and to guard, is more the feminine, which is the prohibitive commandments. Okay, so that's just setting up the basic knowledge that we need in order to begin this mimer. So now he says, to understand all this, first of all, you have to understand what Shabbos is about. What does it mean? It says at the end of creation, on the sixth day, just before Shabbos, it says Hashem looked at everything that He created and it was all very good. What does that mean? So during the 6 days of creation, those are what He made, all the actions that He did in order to make the world. By speaking, by taking these letters that again, the building blocks of reality are these letters, and Hashem spoke them. And the idea again is not that Hashem speaks, but rather that that's how we can understand it. All these are part of the 10 utterances. What does it mean that Hashem spoke? So it means that there was a descent here. The energy went down a level. Right? What does it mean it went down? It left, as it were, the place where it's one, and it became separate. Down in spirituality means
It's always connected.
What?
It's always connected. It's not
In Hashem, that's what it says in Tanya. But when we look at speech in man, so I have a thought, and when I speak it, it detaches from me. So if I liken that in Hashem, so if something detaches from Hashem, it's at a lower level. Of course, from Hashem's point of view, there's no such thing. Nothing can detach from Him because there's nothing but Him. That's what you meant. But from the point of view of what was spoken, it feels detached now. It feels like it was extruded, taken out of Hashem's consciousness, as it were.
Yeah.
And it became something separate. It became a separate reality. So that's called descent. Descent is the lower down you go in the worlds, from Atzilus to Bria to Yetzirah to Asiya. The lower down you go, the more feeling of separation there is, separation from divinity.
Yeah.
To the point where, unfortunately, most of the people who live in Asiya, they have no inkling that there's such a thing called the divine. They just don't know. We talked about this last week. That even if they get a hint of it, it's like a spark. It's like for a fleeting moment, like a spark that comes out of a fire. For a fleeting moment, there's suddenly this recognition that there's Hashem, and then it's gone. There's no ability to engage in learning, for instance, about it, again, like the way that we learn with Torah, that we're with Hashem all the time. That doesn't exist apart from in Torah. In any case, the point here is that the extraction of the words by being spoken is called a descent for them, for these words, for these ideas, for how Hashem is now expressing Himself. It's a lower form of expression. Just as there is speech, how do we know speech? Because it says, because it says Hashem spoke. But how do we know that there's thought? Because it says, so the Navi says, the prophet says, my thoughts are not like your thoughts, meaning he has thoughts. So there must be both speech and thought by Hashem. Again, we want to understand what it means. But it means that not only is there speech, not only did Hashem create the world with speech, but the Naviim, they also use the simile that Hashem thinks. And again, they're using our language, they're using our understanding of speech and of thought to try to capture something in the divine.
But sorry to interrupt you, but there is one thing to be said, is that when we're talking about what we're just saying, where Moshe heard the words, and as you said, he heard them at the same time, we're still talking about like when somebody's communicating with another person, Moshe is still hearing. He might not be hearing physically, but he's still getting a human perspective coming from above. So the point is, it's not just on a godly level, it's also being brought down to a human level so that a human's brain can perceive it. Do you know what I'm trying to say? It's still speech
100%.
on some level.
100%. This isn't going to be the topic. It's not going to be how we perceive it, but rather what it means that Hashem thinks and talks.
Okay.
What is the difference between the two? So we said speech, we explained to a certain extent, it means that it becomes detached. Like in a person, when a person speaks, he doesn't control the words once they come out of his mouth. They're gone.
Okay.
As long as they're still in your head, so they're part of you, so you can control them. But one moment so that's like the idea of everything that was created in Genesis by Hashem's speech is, at least from the point of view of what was created, it's autonomous. It's like it stands by itself. It doesn't need Hashem anymore as a word. That's the thing. But his focus now is going to be to explain what machshava means.
Okay.
So machshava is called al-min stimin. It's called hidden worlds. Why is it hidden? Because it doesn't come out. Because you can think, nobody knows what you're thinking. You're just thinking in yourself. Nobody sees it. So anytime we talk about concealed worlds, we're talking in essence about worlds of thought or supernal thought. But b'chinat dibur, but when we speak about Hashem's speech as a word, so it's called Alma D'Itgalia. It's called a revealed world. So what is the revealed world? Here it is. It's revealed. I see it. Here it is. It's right here. Can I see all these things? I experience all these things. These are all part of Hashem's speech. Everything I can experience is a part of His speech.
It's not totally revealed because you don't see the godliness inside this table. You can't see Hashem in this table.
In the same way that you can't see the person who's speaking in the words that were spoken. You can't see him.
No, I'm saying so it's not totally revealed.
What?
It's not totally revealed.
It's exactly like human speech in that respect. It's revealed in the sense that it's no longer concealed in his head. The thought, not he himself. It's a very big deal to be able to tell what a person looks like from his speech. How many times are we really surprised when we suddenly see somebody whose voice we've heard many times, but didn't know what they looked like? And suddenly we see them and say, oh, you're nothing like what I imagined. Why is that? Because there's no connection. Speech is not connected to the essence of the person. It's an external garment, relatively external.
The Alter Rebbe said that he could see the spirituality in a table. So it depends on the human being.
That's in a table. That's something else. The usual explanation is that you can see the artisan you can see certain aspects of him. You can't see him fully.
For sure. Okay.
So, for instance, famous stories from the Maggid. The Maggid once said that actually where the phrase "the blind watchmaker" comes from. He said that he could see that a watchmaker was that from a watch you could tell that the person who made it was blind in one eye. He's not just blind; he's blind in one eye. How did he know? So afterwards he explained. He said that you could see that the strings were turned too tight, or tighter than they usually are. So what does that mean? So he says, they were loose. They were a little looser than what they usually are. So he said, usually, when a person sees with both eyes, when the watchmaker sees with two eyes, so he's got this magnifying glass that he uses in order to see inside the little parts. Nobody knows what little parts are anymore because nobody makes watches like that. But that's the way it used to be made. So he usually has to squint in order to hold the eyepiece and be able to work. So he says because he squints in order to hold it, like he puts it in this eye and he has to do that. So it tenses his muscles ever so slightly. So everything that he'll do will be with more tension.
Wow.
So he said I could see this person didn't have eyesight in the other eye because he didn't need to squint.
Wow.
That's it. You can play tricks like this with many things. Whether how you see it or how you don't see it, that I don't know, but that's at least what he said. So that means seeing, but in speech you can't see. You can't see who the person is. But it's called the world of revelation. Why? Because you see the thoughts. The big deal about speech is that thoughts come out. Whereas before they were hidden inside the person's mind, when you speak them, they come out. And letters that come out in speech are called revelation. והנה הדיבור מקבל מבחינת המידות העליונות שבחינת שיט היומין דבראשית עם 6 מידות עליונות. והנה ידוע המאמר עליו דאית לך צדק ידיע, כולם לאחזה שבאדם מבחינת חסד וחמים מעורר התפעלות בנפשו, להשפיע מה שאין כאן מידותיו, יתברך מיוחדות בו, יתברך שהוא אחדות פשוט, בלי שום שינוי התפעלות, כמו שכתוב, אני הווי לא שניתי, וזהו לאו דאית לך צדק ידיע. ובהיות כן שהשישה מידות עליונות הן ממש מבחינת התפעלות ושינוי, על כל כך, כדי שיהיה נמשך מבחינת המידות ומבחינת העיבור להיות המתגלה, הוא רק מבחינת חוריים לשון תרגום. So this is a mouthful. This is a big deal here. It says, speech in general is like malchus. Malchus is the power of speech. We say Rachel is the power of speech. Leah is the power of thought. So Rachel, she's in malchus. And malchus in general receives all its light, all its chayus, all its life from the 6 sfirot above it, from chesed to yesod. Everything goes into malchus. There's actually a sikha that was on this week's Shabbos. They brought on the Dvar Malchus that the Rebbe talked about why it had to say that Miriam was the sister of Aaron. It says when she went to sing with the women, it says "Vatikach Miriam Neviah achot Aaron et tatof biyada." So why do you have to tell us that she's Aaron's sister? He says that you should know that this is like an explanation to tell us what the source of her song was. And she knows she took the song from Aaron. Theoretically, she took it from Moshe Rabbeinu, but in this case, she took it from Aaron without getting into why it's Aaron, not Moshe. So he says like this: that even though normally you would assume that every person has his own thing going. He's got his own opinion, he's got his own stuff. He says by women it's not like that. He says she's Malchus, and Malchus gets everything from what's above. So she gets everything from the 6 sfirot above. But how is it? So why is she not just like a automaton, like nothing? He says because she reveals the essence, the etzim. She says even when a man speaks and the woman hears, she hears better than what he speaks. It's a very interesting concept. That as much as he wants to say something, he gets lost, call it in the rhetoric. And she picks up on what the point was. So she actually states it better than he will. So in a certain sense, it's called Ken Bnot Tzlofchad Dovot. The 5 daughters of Tzlofchad, they say they spoke well. They've spoken well. What do you mean they've spoken well? That they heard the sugya. They heard the whole question of whether they could inherit land or not inherit land. But and they before they came to Moshe Rabbeinu, they consulted with a lot of chachamim, with a lot of wise men, and each one said, "What do you think? So this direction, that direction. Can you not?" So they heard all these opinions, and then they came and stated their case before Moshe Rabbeinu. So Hashem said they've stated the case so well that they're right the way they say things. Meaning they said it better than everybody before them even, and Hashem accepted it because of that. So it's like that when the woman says something, it's better said than if a man says it. She might not be able to think it up by herself, depending on what she's involved in. It could be that she doesn't know about these things, but she hears it, and when she says it, she'll say the point. She'll state the essence of what was meant much better than the man. So that what it means that the power of speech is in Malchus. It's in. So what happens? So just to say that because Malchus doesn't have anything of its own. Not to have anything of your own means not to be self-involved. So when it states something, it states it objectively. Whereas when the midos, when the male side states something, the ego is always involved.
Mm-hmm.
There's always a sense of self-interest in it.
Mm-hmm.
It can't be stated objectively. It's an incredible thing.
Yeah.
It's saying that the man will always introduce some element of why it's important for him. He's going to give examples that make it close to him.
נוגע בדבר.
Okay? He's always with self-interest.
Yeah.
It's a very very powerful thing.
Yeah.
It says that that's how Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David are. Mashiach ben Yosef is relatively masculine. Mashiach ben David, who's Malchus, he's relatively feminine.
Huh.
So he says Mashiach ben Yosef, even though he's always teaching, he's like the Rebbe. He's always teaching, but there's a feeling all the time that if you don't accept what he says, he's going to be hurt. His opinion. I'm not talking about his feelings, not revealing his feelings. His opinion. If you don't accept what I say, it won't work well. But by Mashiach ben David, he says, no, I'm nothing. I have nothing of my own. Whatever Hashem tells me to say, that's what I say. There's nothing special about me. So my opinions are just opinions. You don't have to worry about saying, no, I don't agree with you, because I'm not going to be hurt, because I'm just repeating something in its pure form. I'm not nogeh b'davar, like you said.
What does that mean? Okay.
I'm not
Not affected by it.
Not affected
no,
by it?
Influence.
more than nogeh b'davar is it's not. I don't have interest in this. I'm stating it matter of factly.
You're not attached to it. Is that what you
Not
mean?
attached to it. Yeah.
Okay.
If you cut it down and you say it's wrong, say it. Fine. It's
I
wrong.
see.
It's not my opinion anyway. I know how to state it well. So there's a plus to being involved. So somebody would say, to really convince somebody, you have to have interest in it. You can't really convince somebody of something if you don't have some vested interest in it. But you can also look at the other way around, that if they reject you, well, they didn't reject you, they rejected the opinion, but you right away feel that you've been rejected. But the feminine side doesn't feel that way. What?
I'm always rejected.
You're always rejected. So, you're a man.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Set up. We'll continue tomorrow because this is going to get really, really good. This is
This
just
is
he's
all
setting
right.
up. He's just setting up stuff.